You want to talk about some shocking news? Now, there have been rumblings that Dan Snyder was ultimately going to sell the Washington Commanders. Well, we didn't know if it was actually going to happen or not. But there was rumblings of it, but there was also doubt it was actually going to go through. Now, there was also some talk that the NFL was going to force him out, but we had a feeling that might not happen because the other owners didn't want Snyder to reel dirt on them. But now, after all this time, Dan Snyder's finally going to sell the Washington Commanders. Wow. Now, even to say I'm an Eagles fan, I mean, obviously, as an Eagles fan, we've had some laughs at their failures under Snyder's reign because that works out well for us, having a division rival that's struggling. However, in this one, we just got to put aside all the fan bias and let's just be direct and talk about this. All right, well, this has been a long time coming, and I'm sure if you're a Washington Commanders fan, you're watching this, you're happy right now that he's going to sell the team. And this was ultimately something, let's face it, he had to do this. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He had to sell the team. It was going to happen no matter what. It had to happen eventually. Because there were just so many issues with this team. From the stadium, sewage leaks, the railing. Remember the incident, Eagles fans, when Jalen Hurts was coming back to the tunnel and the railing fell, nearly landed on top of Hurts, could have killed a few fans as well. Remember that incident? Charging outrageous prices for parking, outrageous price for season tickets, suing season ticket holders that struggle for payments during the recession. I mean, just so many terrible things. Then, of course, pretty much the beginning of the end for Snyder, the sexual harassment investigation that eventually led to John Gruden getting caught up into it with his email scandal between him and Bruce Allen. I mean, so many issues. I mean, the sexual harassment was pretty much the beginning and the end, which led to Snyder having to sell the team. Now, like I said, from my standpoint as an Eagles fan, I enjoyed laughing at the failures of the team under Snyder. However, also there's other people's perspective you got to look at it too. Like for the employees of that organization, that's the best thing that could have happened to them. Because that was such a toxic environment, especially for female employees with all the sexual harassment accusations and situations that were occurring, all the different situations that were occurring. But there were at least 15 of them coming forward saying it was happening. That's a where there's smoke, there's fire situation. And there was also suggestions that Snyder knew about it and encouraged it, which really wouldn't be a surprise there. Just so many things were terrible about the way things were run under him. The Sean Taylor statue, which was a complete botch, a retirement ceremony for his jersey that was deemed more disrespectful than it was a tribute. I mean, there were just so many things wrong from that perspective that if you're a fan of the team and if you're an employee of that organization, you're probably jumping for joy now, knowing that he's gone. And from their stake, they had to do it. They had to. Now, what does this mean for them as a team? Looking at it from the Eagles fan perspective, who knows? Because we still don't know what new direction they're going to go in under new ownership. Now, apparently the top bidders are a group owned by Josh Harris, who has a stake in the 76ers and the New Jersey Devils of the NHL. A little bit interesting there that an owner of a Philly team that has stake in a Philly team is owning a Washington team of a different sport. But that really isn't that big a concern for me. It's really not. Now, how will he do for Washington? First off, who's going to actually get the keys to it? Who's going to have the stake in it? It's rumored him, Magic Johnson, former NBA legend, also has a stake in the Los Angeles Dodgers in the MLB, and Mitchell Rails' his name, who's a business owner in the Washington area. Now, obviously, for Washington, I'm sure it's got to be an upgrade. Any culture's got to be an upgrade for them over the toxic culture that Snyder put into place. It's got to be. Now, who knows what this means as far as team structure going forward? Maybe this means that there's less controlling going on at the top, because that's another thing I got to point out real briefly from Snyder's tenure. He was too much of a control freak during this time there, constantly getting into power struggles with coaches. Case in point, firing Marty Schottenheimer after he helped turn around an 0-5 start to an 8-8 finish without a real star quarterback that year. Who did they have? Tony Banks? and he fired him after one season for Steve Spurrier, who was a terrible hire. Point being is, he didn't like the fact that Marty Schottenheimer had, in his mind, too much control. Point being is, he's a control freak, and basically a Jerry Jones wannabe without the credentials of Jerry Jones. Because at least Jerry Jones, for all I can say to knock him, has those 3 championships in the 90s. I can at least give Jerry Jones credit on that. Now, Dan Snyder, he doesn't have any of those credentials at all. So for them, it's definitely got to be an upgrade, especially if this new ownership is more hands-off and actually letting the coaches, the general managers, and the team personnel run the team instead of trying to control and micromanage the organization. So in that regard, it could be an upgrade for them. But make no mistake about it, that team still has a long way to go before they can truly turn things around, in my view. And right now, they don't really have the right quarterback to compete. So that, I mean, unless Sam Howell just massively comes out of nowhere and has a star season like Jalen Hurts, which you never know what could happen in this world. Sometimes you never know. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. As far as the team goes, hey, remember, Ron Rivera's still the coach. He was a likable guy, but remember last year he showed real lack of situational awareness in that elimination game, not realizing it was an elimination game until the press conference afterward. That's a real red flag about whether Ron Rivera is the right coach or not. So that's still a concern there. Even though he is a likable guy, but is he really the long-term answer for them? I don't know. Not for them, I don't think. But yeah, obviously, though, from a culture standpoint, it's definitely going to be an upgrade for the future. So at least their fan base and their employees have that to look forward to. Will that make them competitive with us again? Time will tell on that one. Not going to talk about that one right here because we don't know. There's a long way to go. There's still drafts. Still, we'll still got to go through the rest of the offseason, regular season, and we'll see what happens ultimately by the time we get to the start of the regular season. But yeah, I wanted to come on here, though, and talk about how I feel about Dan Snyder selling the team, why I feel like he needed to sell the team. Because like I said, ultimately, there were so many bad things about it, with him being way too micromanaging, charging outrageous prices, cheating his fans out of their money, terrible stadium, not a fun stadium to go to, with sewage leaks, loose railing, and who knows what other type of problems that stadium has. Toxic workplace culture, especially for female employees, which we've known about since 2020. So many things bad about it. They had to get rid of them. Now, what will the new ownership be? If it does end up being, if you do have Josh Harris, Magic Johnson, and Mitchell Rales have partial stake in it. Now, there was rumors of Bezos, but I didn't want to comment on those because those have died off. Doesn't look like he's going to get his hands on it. But those are pretty much my thoughts. That is an upgrade for the organization. We'll see what it brings, though, in the future. If it ultimately goes through as it looks like it's going to, that remains to be seen, and we'll see what happens for them. So if you're a Commanders fan, you're still watching this, you watched it all the way through, good for your team. You're moving in a new direction. Best of luck to you guys. So, and as far as the Eagles fan perspective, well, we'll ultimately see what comes out of it for them going forward. That's all I got to say for now. So until next time, Nicky Stees signing off. And I'll be back with some more Philly content.